Good afternoon, Julie. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. For the benefit of everyone at home, Julie Dennis, who is the head of diversity and inclusion at Acas, and she's going to speak to us this afternoon about effective leadership during the COVID crisis and what we have learned from it, from employee wellbeing to team ethos and beyond. So thanks so much for joining us, Julie.
Thank you, Grace, and it's an absolute pleasure to join you today from sunny Derbyshire. So first of all, I thought it'd be really useful if I could talk about what Acas is actually doing to support employers at the minute. So we have got an absolutely fantastic website. Our digital team have been working really hard to provide up-to-date information on everything you need to know about coronavirus. So please, after this, have a look on that website, which is www.acas.gov.uk. We're also running a series of webinars with employers. We've done our most recent one was on furlough, and we're also running weekly Twitter live sessions for employees. They're every Friday from 10:30, so people can ask our helpline staff questions about what COVID-19, the impact it's having on those. So stuff from furlough redundancy through to managing when you're away from work, annual leave and stuff like that. Obviously our helpline is still open as well, and it's providing advice and guidance to employers and employees. And we're also still being able to give tailored support to employers. Obviously, that's virtual advice at the minute. We won't be going into companies. And actually, Acas ourselves, we've gone to a total home working environment now. And we managed to do that within the first week of the shutdown. So I think we're quite well versed to actually give advice to employers about how do you juggle that. And how do you juggle people working from home? Because this is a brand new way of working for a lot of us. You know, I'm quite lucky. I get to balance home working and travel. But for a lot of people, this is a brand new era. A lot of us are not used to working from home. I think the other thing we need to be mindful of is that it may not just be your member of staff that's working from home. So for example, in my team, I've got one of my team members and she's working from home alongside her 2 children and her husband. And they've only got a small house. So again, having to juggle those workspaces, I think as leaders, we need to be mindful that this isn't a normal situation for most of us. And how do we get around that? And that's what I want to cover today. So one of the other things I thought would be useful for us to pick up on just to begin with is that we've already done some research around wellbeing at work, and we've done some recently commissioned work with YouGov, and we found 2 out of 5 employers have dealt with employee stress, anxiety or mental health difficulties over the last year. And then when we're looking at people who are working from home, those people who work from home under normal circumstances, 7 out of 10 of them say that they're missing out on informal contact with colleagues or social interactions. So think about that. If your whole workforce is working from home, that's going to have an impact. And we also know from that research, half of employers felt that they're out of the loop when they're working from home. So again, I think that's really important when you're thinking about your workforce. How can you make sure you stay in touch with them? So I think that moves us very nicely onto effective leadership. You know, we are working in crisis, but that doesn't mean that your leadership skills should go out of the window. You know, we are seeing vast changes in the way of work. It is a stressful time for everybody. And actually, it's more important now than ever that you actually take your time when making difficult decisions. One of the things we're seeing at Acas and some of the calls that are coming through to our helpline are when those organisations have had to make some really difficult and quick decisions, and actually they're forgetting about actually there still is this thing called employment law out there. The Equality Act is still out there, it's still alive and kicking, and we need to make sure that when we're making those decisions, we're not inadvertently treating people less favourably because they're from a particular protected characteristic. And I'll pick that up in a bit in more detail. So how do you make sure that you're keeping in touch with your people whilst we are working this new way? First of all, I think it's really important that you have regular catch-ups with your people. Now, this isn't about checking up on people and making sure they're working. It's actually checking up that your people are okay. Like our research says, people feel quite isolated when they're working from home. Some of your people may not be seeing anybody. You know, I'm self-isolating at home. I've got 2 cats to talk to. Maybe that's quite a good thing, actually, because I've got nobody to fall out with as well. But, you know, quite a lot of your people may be on their own self-isolating, or they may be self-isolating in busy families. So being able to catch up with them and check in and check everything's all right is a really good thing. The other thing is, if you've got the technical ability, doing videoing is a really good way of keeping in touch. Now, I know some of you may be listening to this now thinking, I'm going to have to do my hair, I'm going to have to, you know, look a bit more respectable. You know, actually, that's good for us. I think, you know, we've been doing this for 6 weeks now. We probably are tired of wearing pajamas. So actually, it'd be really good if you do the video calls. But actually, from a line manager's point of view, you can really tell a lot about somebody when you're speaking to them, and you can see their face. You can see how people are reacting. And when you're asking those, you know, probing questions, asking someone how they are, by seeing body language, you can really tell if they are just they're okay, or actually if they're not okay. And then you can see what assistance you can give. So actually, by being able to see someone, that will help you when that person goes back and says, yeah, everything's fine, to be able to say, well, you seem a little different. It doesn't seem like you're okay. What can I do to help? Mm-hmm. Also, need to make sure that you're still setting very clear objectives for your people. Again, we're working differently. People may still want that structure. So actually, making sure your people are clear on what work you're expecting for them, how they're undertaking it, and having regular reviews on how that work's going. Making sure that your people are taking regular breaks. So for example, I'm making sure that I am having a break to have my lunch, moving away from my workspace and going to a different part of the house to actually have my lunch. So I go to my kitchen, have my lunch, or sit in the garden and look at a lovely garden, sit in the garden and have at least half an hour away from my desk. It's really important as well that you encourage your people to separate work and home. And again, recognise that that could be really difficult for some of your people, because actually they may not be the only person working in that household. So making sure they are putting away their laptop or putting away their PC at the end of the day and having that separation from work and home, because it's good for your health and well-being. Obviously, when things get a little bit more complicated for some of your people, making sure they're aware of employee assistance programs that you've got in place. Have you got mental health first aiders? Do they know how to contact them? Have you got, do they know how to contact HR or other people? If you've got trade union reps, etc. I mean, I know, a lot of companies were getting a lot more better employee relations because everyone feels that they're all in this together and we're supporting each other. There's also some fantastic advice out there. So for example, the NHS website has got some great ideas on home-based exercises. So if you're wanting to get fit, and obviously we know the lovely Joe Wicks is doing his workout. You don't have to do that at 9:30. It runs all day. So, I've been doing that in an evening after work. It's helped me de-stress. But like I say, earlier on, I said that employers do need to remember that it is a stressful time, but we still have to remember that normal employment law exists. And again, when you're stressed, sometimes you may make rash decisions. So like I said earlier on, we're hearing that there are some employers out there that aren't doing the right things, that are actually treating people less favourably. We've heard some really horrendous stories of what employers are doing in terms of women that are due to go on maternity leave, or women who are due to come back to maternity leave. Or we're hearing stories about people who've got disabilities and need workplace adjustments. That stuff has not gone away. You just need to think out of the box. So my key tip to make sure that you don't breach the Equality Act is take a step back and first of all think, what would I normally do? So if you've got a member of staff who's due to go on maternity leave, well, what would you normally be doing? That person will be going off on maternity leave as normal. They will be still entitled to maternity pay as normal, regardless whether they're furloughed or not. They are still entitled to that pay. If we're looking at someone who has a disability and that person's home working, what adjustments does that individual need to make sure that they're working in an environment that is not making their disability exacerbated, for example? Or ask, and again, like we've said normally for anything around disability, ask the individual, what adjustments can I make? What would help you to achieve your full potential during this time? Now, obviously, sometimes that may not be as straightforward. And we need to be mindful that a lot of our staff are possibly juggling work and homeschooling. And I take my hat off to all of those parents and carers that are doing that, because it must be really difficult at the minute. So again, it's about employers taking that common sense approach and recognizing that your people may not be able to give 100% at this moment, but actually, if they some time to be able to do their work, they will be actually perform better, and they will remember that in the future when things get back to a little bit of normality. They'll remember how you've treated them, and actually that discretionary effort will continue. I think we also need to be mindful that this is a time when it's not always straightforward for everybody. So making sure your staff, signposting your staff to other support that's out there. So for example, in Acas, we're doing a lot of stuff around mental health and wellbeing for our people. We've got weekly blogs where our staff are sharing some really serious things, but they're also sharing some fun things about what they're doing in this current situation, how they're celebrating birthdays, for example, whilst they can't go out. We've got one member of staff that's doing a marathon in their back garden. We're sharing that. But there's also serious things that we're sharing as well. So it's making sure you signpost staff to specialist support areas. It's recognising that, when we talk about mental health, it's not just about an individual's health and well-being and making sure they've got support, but recognise it could be somebody who's working in a household with somebody else who has got quite a severe mental health condition. So are there any adjustments you can put in place for that person? Is there a possibility of someone working somewhere else, as long as that is safe? And also, if we go to more extremes, what support are you putting in place for any of your staff should they be in a domestic abuse situation? We have to recognise that for most of us, being at home is safe. That's not the case for everybody, unfortunately. There are people, and we know, looking at reports from Women's Aid and Refuge, that we've seen an increase in domestic abuse, unfortunately. So again, whilst you're not expected to be a specialist and know about everything, it's about signposting your staff to those specialist areas. And gov.uk has some excellent information about how to support people when it comes to domestic abuse or stuff around mental health and wellbeing. Mind as well are a really good resource, and Acas has got some fantastic hints and tips on how to support your employees' health and wellbeing during this difficult time. So finally, a lot of the stuff I've talked about today is about those of you that have got people who are still working for you. And a lot of us are able to continue our organisations, continue our work, but we need to recognise that there are big chunks of people across the UK that are currently being furloughed. You may be one of those companies that's got a combination of staff that some can work from home, but some can't. So again, it's really important you keep in contact with these people throughout this period. It's good for people's mental health. It's good because it stops people feeling isolated. And again, like I said earlier on, what would we normally do? What would you normally do if someone was on maternity leave or was on long-term sick? You would keep in touch, and ACAS would recommend you keep in touch. Well, that should be the same if your staff are furloughed. Now, we're not saying you need to talk to them every day, but what we're hearing is some companies are doing weekly Zoom calls with their teams. Some of them are just doing as simple as a WhatsApp message every week, just to check in to say, how are you doing, and I'm here if you need me. So hopefully I've given you quite a lot of things to think about, and like I said, if there's any extra stuff, our information on ACAS covers a vast array of information, so hopefully if I've not covered everything for you at this moment in time, hopefully you'll be able to find some stuff on our website as well. Thank you.
Super. Thanks so much, Julie. Really valuable insights as ever. Much appreciated.
You're welcome. Thank you.